Mary redeemed a $50,000 cash prize playing Chumba Casino online.
I was only playing for fun, so winning was a dream come true.
Chumba Casino is America's favorite free online social casino. You too could have the chance to win life-changing cash prizes. Absolutely anybody could be like Mary. Be like Mary. Log on to ChumbaCasino.com and play for free now. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details. The voice in the preceding commercial was not the actual voice of the winner.
Welcome to the Unscripted podcast. My name's Corby LaCroix, and the song you're hearing right now is called Great and Mighty One, available on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your music. But for now, here's your host and my friend, Aaron Conrad.
Great Redeemer, God of grace.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Unscripted from my studios in Old Hilliard. And let me just jump right in. My guest today released his first album, which featured the song I Surrender All in 1994. He became known for singles such as I Surrender All, Midnight Cry, He Walked a Mile, Saving the World, and I Will Follow Christ. He won the Dove Award for New Artist of the Year at the 25th GMA Dove Awards in 1994. 9 songs from his first 4 albums became #1 singles. And during this period, He Walked a Mile won the 1997 CCM Adult Contemporary Song of the Year. In 1999, his song I Will Follow Christ won the Dove Award for Inspirational Song of the Year. Clay served as a worship pastor under head pastor Dana Key. We're going to talk about that, of the Christian rock group DeGarmo and Key. And I'll just turn it over to you. Clay, welcome to Unscripted.
Man, Aaron, I appreciate you having me on the show today. And everything you just read, it still astounds me that all that ever happened. But I know that it did. I've got to prove it. But the good memories, and it's pretty wild. That was quite a season of my life for me and Renee, and it's amazing. So just having you just list it there verbatim, I was like, that all really happened.
That's right. That's right. And you should be proud of it. And what I think I'm even more proud of, as I've read and read your book, which we'll talk about in a second, just followed you. It's how life has happened. And so we talked a little bit offline. I think it's going to be very interesting how the very first song that really, at least I was familiar with, I think a lot of people became familiar with, was I Surrender All. And the lyrics of that song, so that's my first question for you. And everybody, in case I didn't say it, it's Clay Crosse, everybody. And today's Thursday. So this is a TBT, depending on when you're hearing it. I don't know, but it's a throwback Thursday. And I'm talking to Clay Crosse, which is pretty awesome. So, all right, my first question for you, did you know, did you even think, you just talked about we talked about the accolades. When you sang that song in 1994, did you have any idea that it would somehow play out almost in your life looking down the road?
I didn't, and I could see the impact that it had anytime I sang it in a different way than other songs that I was singing. So I knew there was something powerful about it and special about it. But for real, in my life personally, it's something that I was singing and God was calling me to actually live out. Right. And it took a few years, honestly, for it to just, as they say, to take in my life in a real way. But I'm super thankful that he kept after me. I was thinking the other day, man, I don't deserve Jesus, but he just, he won't leave me alone.
That's right. And that's a good problem to have, right? I mean,
it's on me. He just loves me too much. And it's, so I'm just grateful, and to be able to declare that. Yeah. That anything good we're going to talk about today, man, anything good is because of him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right. So, in the lyrics themselves, when I thought about the story that I know of you, and again, on my desk is a copy of a book called "I Surrender All" that you wrote in 2009. Is that right? Was it 2009 or 2007?
It was a little after that. I feel like it was. I don't know the exact date, but it was after my recommitment to Christ that took place in 1998. So it would have had to have been after that. I think it was early 2000s.
Early 2000s. It's a fantastic book, and that's where I was already familiar with your music, and then I became familiar with your story, and even more so now in studying that. But I have to read this because for anyone that has not heard this song, listen to these lyrics. It says, "I have wrestled in the darkness of this lonely pilgrim land, raising strong and mighty fortresses that I alone command. But these castles I've constructed by the strength of my own hand are just temporary kingdoms on foundations made of sand. In the middle of the battle, I believe I've finally found I'll never know the thrill of victory till I'm willing to lay down all my weapons of defense and earthly strategies of war. So I'm laying down my arms and running helplessly to yours." Amazing.
Well, I was written by a friend of mine, Reggie Ham, along with co-writer David Moffat. And they wrote a powerful one. I mean, I don't want to misuse a word, but just an anointed piece.
Right.
And it applies to my life. And the second verse goes on to talk about, looking at things of this world and accomplish and labels that we get or try to achieve for ourselves, and laying all that down. The source of my ambition is the treasure I attain.
Right.
That shouldn't be it. There's more. So the Lord showed me that over the years. In the midst of all those years I was singing that song,
right,
He showed it personally in my life. And
that's what I was so interested in is, and I didn't even get to the second verse. You mentioned it already. Knowing what I've known and then in my own life, I think that's why that attached to people so closely, was because of we've all been there. We've chased our own dreams, and it's not until we lay them down, and I think that's why that song hits so personally for so many people.
No doubt. I mean, you can chase this world, you can chase the things that people think are success. And you come to a place where you realize none of it defines me. None of it adds up to everything that I need to be. And what I need to be is a child of God. What I need to be is his servant, and truly surrender to him in everything that I'm doing. So it's a challenging song, for one thing. I mean, it always did. As the words were coming out of my mouth, would challenge me to try to live. It was, but again, very thankful.
And your journey started at FedEx, correct?
Well, I worked for Federal Express for 6 years prior to getting the record deal and going into music. So I'm thankful for that job that I had. It put food on the table for me and Renee in our early years of marriage, and I transferred to Nashville with Federal Express and was able to get a record contract and record that first CD with that one on there. Mm-hmm. But I was still working at FedEx the whole time, because you're not exactly getting paid until you're actually out there on the road doing it. So I had to continue to pay bills. And the record company released the single even before I went on the road. So get this, that song went to number 1 on the CCM charts. And I got the news of it in my FedEx uniform in my van, still driving my route, because I put in my notice for when I was going to leave, but it hadn't happened yet.
Is that right? So, unbelievable. I mean, in your wildest dreams, did you ever think that would happen?
Oh, no. I mean, growing up in Memphis, Tennessee, I sang anywhere that I could. I started to really believe that I had that ability, but I was aware of the odds of getting a break and, becoming a known artist. But I was going to try. I was going to give it my best. Mm-hmm. And few roads, before the the record deal with Reunion Records were closed for me. Things didn't work out. So I started to wonder, will it? I kind of conceded that it might not, and that I might just continue to work for FedEx. It's a good company to work for, or go into something else. I had my eye on possibly going into broadcasting, wanted to potentially be a sports broadcaster because I like sports so much, like to talk about it. So I fancied myself being able to be one of those guys on ESPN or whatever. That's a big dream in itself, because that's highly competitive as well. But more than that, I like to sing. I really do. And that's where God opened up the doors for me.
Well, and I think you found the right path, or God at least moved you to the right path for the right reasons, because there's so many songs. I mentioned a few right off the top. He Walked a Mile, Saving the World, I Will Follow Christ. Huge hits to a lot of people that, so many people, and especially I think right at that, do you feel like you hit the scene right when, and I think there's a documentary out about this right now, but do you feel like you hit that scene right at that sweet spot of when, CCM music was really just exploding with a lot of great talented artists?
I do. I mean, I grew up listening to some of the pioneers in Christian music, from Larry Norman to Second Chapter, Keith Green. But when I came on, it had really grown in popularity and nationwide, fan base. And yes, I mean, the 90s were great. When you think about some of the big successes of Amy or Michael or Jars of Clay, or, Point of Grace for Him, Stephen Curtis. There was some big time artists going on, and I got to rub shoulders with all of those people at one time or another, whether it be on multi-artist tours or industry events, and we certainly played on the same radio stations that they were played on. So pretty amazing still to think about.
Yeah. So through your journey, your faith and those things, I think you touched on this for a minute, it was challenged, and you had to make some decisions and some hard conversations and things like that. Can you just touch on that little season of your, not little, it's obviously a massive season of your life and your walk, but can you just kind of touch on where God took you from those early days that we were talking about, when everything's just booming, to, the challenges that we all go through? Because those are the seasons, that we all walk through.
Yeah, it was about 4 years into what I would call the really successful years, where something happened to my singing voice, and we still don't know what it was, but I lost a bit of confidence singing, and was just having a hard time singing like I was used to singing. I could get through a song, but it didn't quite have that power or control that it had, and we didn't know what was going on. So I went to see some vocal specialists, the Vanderbilt Voice Center in Nashville, where they medically look at, is something wrong in there, and they didn't find anything. So I was glad that they didn't find anything, but I was still confused as to why I was having a hard time singing. So I went to see a vocal coach, and this man's name is Chris Beatty. He calls himself the vocal coach, as he should, because he's very good at it. And he started working with me, but more than just on the singing, he challenged me as a Christian man. He really mentored me, and he knew that I was going through something, and that I was scared, and I was struggling. And he really got me on a deeper level of getting into God's word like I never had, praying like I never had. He was a longtime believer, and leading Renee in a different way than I ever had. And he started getting in there on a deep level, and I was just very convicted, because I knew I'm not doing these things. I'm singing songs about a faith in Christ, but not exactly living it out. And there were certainly issues in my life and areas that I can directly point to say, well, there's evidence that you were serving yourself, that you were self-centered, that you were chasing your career more than trying to look at it as a ministry. And one of the specific areas that, I've talked about over the years and share with others was the issue of pornography. And it was something that had surfaced in my life during those years. And I knew that it didn't belong, but it came to a point where I realized this is really going to destroy me if I just continue to be casual about it. Mm-hmm. So I confessed this to Renee, and it was a challenging season for me to confess that to her and her to realize, because really there was no indicators there was anything wrong with our marriage at all. I was crazy about her, but that issue was in my life, and she walked with me through it. She forgave me over time, but really that was the turning point in my life of recommitting my life to Christ, to saying, okay, here's real evidence that I'm incredibly selfish and that I'm incredibly self-centered, and I want to be different. I want to be a different kind of husband to her, different father to my children. I want to sing these songs and be able to stand behind them, be able to stand behind with my life.
Right.
So things began to change for me, in my live appearances. I began to share more and felt a real comfort and a real peace to just tell the whole world what I just told you.
Yeah.
And doors began to open for me to go share at men's events, or for me and Renee to go share at marriage events. And it really, it changed everything. My career in Christian music began to taper off over the years, and I began to serve more locally in local churches in Memphis, like the one you talked about with Dana Key.
Yeah.
And after that, when I served at a church, Faith Baptist had an Arlington, Tennessee campus where I served with Pastor Brian Carlisle. And for the past 9 years, I've been here at First Baptist Church, Bentonville, Arkansas, Senior Pastor Chris Dixon. And this is what God's called me to. It's almost like he was preparing me all those years to go into local ministry. So that's a really quick synopsis of what happened in 1998, but it was a recommitment to Christ. It truly was. And I'm thankful for those years. I'm thankful for what God showed me, how he protected me and Renee, because we could be having a very different conversation right now. In fact, we wouldn't be having a conversation, because I don't know where I would be, or I wouldn't be in a place to be talking to you about all this. Had all that not happened, and God protected me and turned the direction of my life in that really pivotal time for me, and Renee standing by me, just being a rock. But it could have gone very differently if I had been casual about that issue in my life and just continue to kind of sweep it under the rug and say, this is no big deal. Like a lot of men say, a lot of men and women that are addicted to pornography would say, it's not really a big deal. I'm not really doing anything or acting out. It's just a fantasy. Had I been that casual about it, I would have been destroyed, and we would have been destroyed. I wouldn't be sitting here at all with a place in local ministry, or with my marriage intact. So many things would have been different, and what happened since I've moved here to Bentonville, Arkansas, 2 of my daughters meeting their husbands here, who I love dearly. I love my sons-in-law, and now we have a grandbaby through that. So I'm imagining she wouldn't exist, my little granddaughter.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
It's about reverse engineering, and you look backwards. Okay, how can we, how did this come about? It wouldn't have happened,
right,
apart from God's grace.
Incredible. And it goes back to, again, I go back to the song again. If sacrifice requires that all my kingdoms fall, I surrender all. And essentially that's what happened in your life. You had to surrender, and that's why I just found that so interesting, that your first hit on the scene has so much defined so much of your story, I believe. And that's why I don't know. The more I listened and reflected and, got ready for today, I'm just like, man, that if sacrifice requires that all my kingdoms fall, I surrender all. And you had to give up a lot of your kingdoms. You had to surrender quite a bit. And thank God you did for the reasons you just said. And the second thing I would say is thank God for our brides. Incredible. And your honoring of her. I know I appreciate that. And again, I want to mention it. The book is I Surrender All. Very well written. And because here's an important thing. I think what you said is, you could probably substitute the word pornography for any other thing. There's a lot of other things that the guys, so if you listen to this and you're like, I ain't got a problem. No, there's probably another problem, you know what I mean? And there's probably another addiction. There's probably another thing that's currently, and if you're listening to this and you know what it is, then it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, but you got to deal with it. And so that you can have the joy that Clay just mentioned and have the experience what he's been able to experience because of the tough. We got to go through that tough sometimes.
Yeah. And we have a loving Father, and he walks with us through those seasons. And anybody I talk to, any follower of Christ that I talk to says their greatest years of growth were in some years of challenge.
Absolutely.
It's not necessarily in the mountaintop seasons, but it's more where you're in a low place and you truly have to look up and say, Lord, I kind of thought I had this figured out. I kind of thought I could just make a good life for myself, and I've crowded you out. And I don't want to do that anymore. Yeah. I want to recommit. I want to surrender to you again. Yeah. That's my prayer for anybody watching this, anybody listening to this, because we can allow the cares of this world to crowd him out. And Absolutely. It's a bad thing.
It's so funny. It's almost like we practiced this and we did not. It is unscripted. The very next note that I had, throw it back even farther. I want to talk about Midnight Cry because I know a lot of people that's their song. And that one, we had a tough week this week as a country, a really hard week. And I was listening again to Midnight Cry and I, it said, I look all around me and the prophecies fulfilling and the signs and times they're appearing everywhere. I can almost hear the Father as he says, son, go get my children. At the midnight cry, the bride of Christ shall rise. I know every generation thinks we're getting close. We're getting close. He's coming soon. But boy, those words sent chills up my spine because, man, we could list a million things right now that's going on in the country and in the world, and it's tough. And you can almost hear the Father say, "Go get my children." What do you think about that in terms of how Midnight Cry is still so appropriate to this day?
Well, you're right. Every generation has thought we're close. Right. Imagine the generation of World War II, right. Just thinking that we're right. We're right on the edge. But today, currently, we just see indicator after indicator that it's closer than it's ever been, as the song says, as Scripture says. And we should live our lives with the understanding that Jesus is going to return. Mm-hmm. And I was reading in his word just yesterday and we should live it in a way that like we're every day we're kind of ready. Like we are, he won't catch us by surprise. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it will obviously in that moment be like nothing anyone's ever seen, but still, as a follower of his, to have that heart of, it could be today, and I want to be about your business. How can I be your hands and feet as you call us to be in every moment with whoever I'm having a conversation with or whoever I'm dealing with? Let me be like you. Yeah. Let me speak to them in a way you would want me to.
Yeah. I've taken a lot of your time and I've appreciated your time. You were so generous coming on. I got one more thing for you. This is a little surprise. So, I'm going to read these and, I'm going to see if you remember who this was.
All right.
This is my thank you to you. So, but let's see if you remember who this was. Seasons change and days go by. People come and people go. Though our paths lead us apart, they will meet one day, I know. For I owe you so much, dear friend, and all those treasured times. For you've made me a richer man, having you in my life. Do you remember who that was?
I don't think I do.
It was your first worship job, DeGarmo and Key, my friend, DeGarmo and Key. It's one of my most treasured songs.
Oh, well, Dana was truly a Bible teacher. I mean, yes, he could play guitar like nobody, and great songwriter, and clearly DeGarmo and Key traveled all over this country and saw so many people give their lives to Christ. But deep down, that man was a Bible teacher, and he planted that church in Memphis, and I was grateful to be able to be his worship pastor for a few years and just sit under his teaching, and enjoyed so much. Renee and I would tell anyone those were really rich years of our life, because it was after the CCM thing kind of tapered down, and I was being called into local ministry, and it wasn't the easiest thing in the world to go through that transition, but Dana made it great. And that church was called TLC, the Love of Christ. And it was just kind of a more, it was just, for the time, more casual dressed, and, you sit there and listen to Bible teaching and drink your coffee. And I don't know, it sounds like a normal thing now because it's
ahead of its time.
Back then it was just kind of different. And the band that I played with there was comprised of these college students who were really good. And it was just like, wow, this is cool. But enjoyed it so much, and, Dana passed on a few years ago, went to be with the Lord. But I'm thankful for those years with him.
Yeah, absolutely. They had fantastic music, and that one has always been one of my favorites. I've quoted that to a lot of different friends, and I'm going to quote it to you. My day is richer, and my life is richer today, having spent time with you. And I can't thank you enough for your music, for your book, and your transparency, and the brokenness that you shared in that book, for those of us that need to address some things. Thank you for your ministry now, and thank you for giving me a little bit of time on this crazy podcast.
All right, Aaron. Well, man, I appreciate you having me on. I want to encourage you as you do this, with everything you do, to just continue to shine a light for Christ.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you. We will be in touch. And I actually have a good friend who lives in Arkansas. So next time I'm out there, I'm going to dial it up. I'm going to come worship with you.
Do it. All right. Love that.
All right.
I'll put you on stage.
No, that ain't going to happen. That ain't going to happen. Thanks so much. God bless you, Clay.
All right, Aaron. Take care.
Awesome. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Unscripted podcast. Make sure to like, share, follow, and review on your favorite podcast platforms. Also, make sure to check out my song Great and Mighty One on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you find your music. We'll see you next time on Unscripted with Aaron Conrad.